An 8-year-old girl was stolen from her bed while her parents slept. 5 days later, locked in a basement, she found a crack in the window. Outside, a lone biker smoked in an abandoned parking lot. She whispered the only words she could, "I was kidnapped. Please help me." The man who heard her had spent 30 years running from his past. But when he looked into those terrified eyes, he stopped running. By dawn, 47 Hell's Angels surrounded the building. What they found inside would shake an entire state. If this satisfies your heart, please like, comment, and follow. The men came at 3 a.m. Emma Collins was dreaming about her birthday party, the one that was supposed to happen next week, with the unicorn cake and the bounce house. When the hand clamped over her mouth, her eyes flew open. 3 shadows, 3 men. Masks covering their faces, gloves covering their hands. She tried to scream. Nothing came out. "Don't fight," a voice whispered. "Don't make a sound. Do what we say and you'll see your mommy again." It was a lie. Emma knew it was a lie. Even at 8 years old, she could hear the emptiness in those words. But she couldn't fight. She was small. They were big. And the hand over her mouth was so tight she could barely breathe. They wrapped her in her own blanket, carried her through the window they had jimmied open, placed her in the back of a van that smelled like oil and fear. The last thing Emma saw before the doors slammed shut was her house, her home, the porch light her mother always left on. Then darkness. Sarah and Michael Collins woke at 6 a.m. Sarah went to wake Emma for school. The bed was empty, the window was open, the unicorn nightlight was still glowing, illuminating nothing. For 3 seconds, Sarah's brain refused to process what she was seeing. Then she screamed. The police came, then more police, then FBI. The house became a command center. Phones, computers, maps, agents speaking in urgent tones. "We're doing everything we can," they said. "We have every available resource," they said. "We'll find her," they said. Days passed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They found nothing, no ransom demand, no credible tips, no evidence beyond the jimmied window and a single boot print in the garden soil. Emma Collins had vanished. 200 miles away, Emma sat in darkness. The basement was cold, damp. It smelled like mold and something worse, something she didn't want to identify. They had given her a mattress, a bucket, 2 bottles of water, and a box of crackers that was already running low. No one had explained anything. No one had told her why she was here or what they wanted. But she had heard them talking. "Buyer's coming Thursday," one of them said. "Wants to see the merchandise first. She's perfect, young blonde, no marks. We'll get top dollar." "What about the parents, the news coverage? Makes her more valuable. Some buyers like the risk." Emma didn't understand all the words, but she understood enough. She was being sold, like a thing, like a toy. She cried the first 2 days, then the tears ran out. Now she just sat in the darkness, trying to remember her mother's face, trying not to forget who she was. On the 5th night, something changed. The man they called Pete went out for food. The other 2, Marcus and a fat one named Dale, drank whiskey until they passed out on the couch upstairs. Emma heard them snoring through the floorboards. For the first time since the basement door had locked behind her, she was alone. She looked around, searching, hoping, praying. The window, high on the wall, too small for her to fit through. Painted black, but the paint was old and cracked. And in one corner, a gap, a sliver, where the frame had rotted and pulled away from the glass. Emma dragged her mattress across the floor, climbed on top, pressed her eye to the crack. Outside, a parking lot, cracked asphalt, weeds growing through the gaps, an old gas station sign, dark and broken, and a man. Rocco Ghost Mancini was not supposed to be there. He was supposed to be in Nevada by now, 3 states away, running from a life that had finally caught up with him. But his bike had broken down, fuel line, of all things. And this abandoned gas station was the only shelter he'd found before the rain started. Now he sat under the rusted awning, smoking a cigarette, watching the storm clouds roll in. 47 years old. 30 years with the Hells Angels, a lifetime of things he wasn't proud of. Rocco had never hurt a woman or a child. That was his line, the one thing he could cling to when the darkness got too heavy. But he'd done plenty else, crimes that kept him awake at night, choices that echoed in his skull like gunshots. He was tired of running. Tired of being Ghost, the man who moved through the world leaving nothing behind. Maybe that's why he heard her. Please. At first, he thought it was the wind, or his imagination, or the whiskey he'd had 3 hours ago. Please, help me. Rocco turned, looked at the building behind him, an old house attached to the gas station. Abandoned, he'd assumed. Dark windows, no cars. I was kidnapped, please. A child's voice, barely audible, coming from somewhere low. Rocco moved before his brain caught up, followed the sound, around the side of the building, down to where a basement window sat just above ground level. And there, through a crack no bigger than his thumb, he saw an eye, blue, terrified, young. Help me, please. They're going to sell me. Rocco's blood turned to ice. Who? He whispered. Who has you? 3 men. 2 are sleeping upstairs. Please, please help me. I want my mommy. Rocco looked at the building, at the dark windows, at the situation he had stumbled into. He should call the cops. That was the right thing, the smart thing, but cops took time. Cops asked questions, and whoever had this child would hear sirens coming from a mile away. What's your name, sweetheart? Emma. Emma Collins. The name hit him like a punch. He'd seen the news, the frantic parents, the massive search. I know who you are, Emma. Everyone's looking for you. Rocco pressed his face closer to the crack. Listen to me very carefully. I'm going to get you out. But I need to make some calls first. Can you stay quiet? Stay hidden? Yes. How many men? 3, but 1 left to get food. When will he be back? I don't know. An hour. Maybe more. 1 hour. Maybe. Okay. I need you to be brave, Emma. Can you do that? I've been brave for 5 days. Something cracked in Rocco's chest. This little girl, 8 years old, stolen from her bed, locked in a basement waiting to be sold, had been brave for 5 days. Yeah, you have. And you only need to be brave a little longer. He stood up. I'll be back, I promise. Please don't leave me. I'm not leaving. I'm getting help. The kind of help those men upstairs are not going to survive. He walked back to his bike, pulled out his phone, and made a call he hadn't made in 6 months. Diesel! It's Ghost. Silence. Then thought you were out. I was, but I found something. Someone. Rocco's voice hardened. A little girl. Kidnapped. 5 days missing. Emma Collins. The one all over the news. She's here, in a basement, 200 miles from where she was taken. Where's here? Old gas station on Route 17, about 20 miles past the state line. Abandoned. 3 guys holding her, 2 asleep inside, 1 out getting food. You call the cops? No time and no trust. These guys are connected to something bigger. You don't grab a kid this clean and move her this far without organization. Diesel was quiet for a moment, then, how many brothers can you reach? However many you can get me. Give me 2 hours. I might not have 2 hours. Then stall. Do what you do best. Diesel's voice dropped. Ghost, if this is what you say it is. It is. I looked in her eyes. She's real. She's terrified. And she's running out of time. Then we ride 2 hours, stay alive until then. The line went dead. Rocco looked at the building, at the basement window where a little girl waited in the dark. 2 hours. He could do 2 hours. Pete came back in 90 minutes. Rocco watched from behind a rusted dumpster as the van pulled in. A skinny man, with a face like a weasel, got out, carrying fast food bags. He went inside. Lights came on. Voices, muffled but audible. Rocco checked his phone. 47 brothers en route, 30 minutes out. Too long. He could hear them talking now. Louder, arguing. Buyer moved it up. Says he wants her tonight. Tonight? That's 6 hours early. I don't make the rules. Pack her up. We move in an hour. Rocco's stomach dropped. 1 hour. They were moving Emma in 1 hour. He couldn't wait for backup. The gun was in his saddlebag. He hadn't touched it in 6 months, had promised himself he was done with that life. But this wasn't about his life anymore. He checked the clip. Full. 15 rounds. 3 men. 2 probably armed. 1 little girl who couldn't afford for him to miss. Rocco had done harder things, more dangerous things. Things he'd buried so deep they only came out in nightmares. But he'd never done anything that mattered like this. He moved toward the house. The back door was unlocked. Stupid. Arrogant. They thought they were safe out here in the middle of nowhere. Rocco slipped inside. Kitchen. Dark. Smelled like grease and cigarettes. Voices in the next room. 2 men arguing about logistics. The third was nowhere visible. He found the basement door. Padlocked. The lock was old. Rusted. 1 hard hit with the butt of his gun, and it snapped. He opened the door, slowly, stairs descending into blackness. "Emma," he whispered. "It's me." The man from outside. Silence. Then footsteps, small, scared. She appeared at the bottom of the stairs, thin, dirty, eyes huge in the darkness. "You came back." "I told you I would." He reached down. "Come on, we're getting you out." Emma grabbed his hand and climbed the stairs. They were halfway to the back door when the kitchen light clicked on. "What the hell?" Pete, standing in the doorway, eyes wide, going for his belt. Rocco moved on instinct. 3 decades of survival kicked in. He pushed Emma behind him and raised the gun. "Don't." Pete froze. "On your knees, hands on your head. You have no idea who you're messing with." "I know exactly who I'm messing with. Child traffickers, the lowest of the low." Rocco's voice was ice. "Now get on your knees before I put you there permanently." Pete knelt, slowly, eyes burning with hate. "Marcus, Dale, we got a problem." Footsteps upstairs, heavy, fast. "Emma, stay behind me. No matter what happens, stay behind me." "Okay." The 2 other men appeared in the hallway, both armed, both aiming at Rocco. "Drop the gun, old man, you're outgunned." "Maybe, but I'll take at least 2 of you with me, and I'll start with whoever moves first." Standoff, 3 guns, 3 men, 1 little girl pressed against Rocco's back. Then a sound, distant but growing. Engines, dozens of them, getting closer. The men heard it too. Their eyes flickered toward the windows. "What is that?" Rocco smiled. For the first time in months, he smiled. "That's my family." The first motorcycle roared into the parking lot. Then another, then another. 47 Hell's Angels, pouring in like a wave of chrome and thunder. The men's faces went white. "You have about 30 seconds, Rocco said calmly, "to decide how this ends. Option 1, you drop your weapons and pray my brothers are feeling merciful. Option 2, you don't and nobody ever finds your bodies." The guns clattered to the floor. Dawn broke as the police arrived. Someone had called them. Rocco didn't know who, didn't care. What mattered was that Emma was wrapped in a blanket, sitting in the back of an ambulance, alive. Her parents were en route, 40 minutes away, driving like demons. The 3 kidnappers were zip-tied and bleeding. Not seriously, but enough to know they'd made a terrible mistake. "Ghost." Diesel walked over, face unreadable. "Hell of a way to come out of retirement." "Didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice. You chose right." Diesel looked at Emma. "She okay?" "She will be. She's tough. Tougher than anyone her age should have to be." And the traffickers. Connected. This wasn't random. It was organized. These 3 are bottom feeders. Someone bigger is pulling strings. Diesel's jaw tightened. "Then we find them. That's a war. It's a war worth fighting." Diesel put a hand on Rocco's shoulder. "You did good, brother. Whatever you're running from, whatever you think you deserve, you did good today." Rocco looked at the ambulance, at the little girl who had whispered through a crack in the darkness. Maybe Diesel was right. Maybe he had finally done something worth living for. The reunion happened at 7:23 a.m. Sarah and Michael Collins had driven 200 miles in under 3 hours. They had broken every speed limit. They had run every red light. They had prayed every single mile, bargaining with a God they weren't sure they believed in anymore. When they pulled into the gas station parking lot, they saw the motorcycles first. dozens of them, gleaming in the early morning light like chrome soldiers standing guard, then the ambulance, then the police cars, then the FBI vehicles that had finally arrived, too late to matter, then their daughter. Emma was sitting on the ambulance bumper, wrapped in a grey emergency blanket, holding a cup of hot chocolate someone had given her. She looked small, fragile, like a porcelain doll that had been dropped and somehow didn't shatter. But she was alive. Sarah was out of the car before it fully stopped. The door swung open, and she was running, her feet barely touching the ground, screaming her daughter's name like it was the only word she knew. "Emma! Emma! Emma!" Emma's head snapped up. Her eyes, those beautiful blue eyes that Sarah had stared at for hours when she was a baby, went wide with disbelief. "Mommy!" They crashed together in the middle of the parking lot, mother and daughter, two bodies becoming one, holding each other like the world was ending, like letting go meant losing each other forever, like 5 days of nightmare could be erased by the simple act of touch. Michael was there seconds later, wrapping his arms around both of them, creating a cocoon of family. He was sobbing. This man who hadn't cried since his own father's funeral was sobbing like a child. My baby girl, we found you, you're safe, you're safe." Emma buried her face in her mother's shoulder and cried. 5 days of terror poured out in gasping, shaking sobs. 5 days of darkness, of fear, of being treated like merchandise instead of a human being. "I was so scared, Mommy. I was so scared. They were going to sell me. They said I was merchandise. They said nobody would ever find me." But Sarah's face contorted with rage and grief, and a love so fierce it could have burned the world down. "Nobody's ever going to hurt you again. I promise. I swear on my life, baby. Nobody will ever touch you again." The man saved me, the motorcycle man. He heard me through the window. I whispered and he heard me and he came back. He promised he would come back and he did. Sarah looked up, scanning the crowd of bikers standing at a respectful distance. These men who looked like nightmares, but had somehow delivered a miracle. "Which one? Which man saved you?" Emma pointed at Rocco. He was standing apart from his brothers, leaning against his motorcycle, smoking a cigarette, trying to disappear into the morning shadows. He had never been good at taking credit, had spent 30 years learning to be invisible, but there was no hiding from this. Sarah walked toward him, slowly at first, uncertain, then faster as something built in her chest. She stopped 2 feet away, looking at this stranger, this criminal, this outlaw, this man she would have crossed the street to avoid a week ago, who had given her daughter back. "You saved her. I was in the right place at the right time, that's all." "No." Sarah shook her head violently. "No, that's not all. You could have walked away, could have called the cops and disappeared, could have decided it wasn't your problem. But you didn't. You stayed. You fought 3 armed men. You brought her back to me." Her voice cracked like ice breaking. "You brought my baby back." Rocco didn't know what to say. 47 years of hard living hadn't prepared him for this. A mother's gratitude, raw and overwhelming and completely undeserved. "I did what anyone would do. No one else did. For 5 days, no one else did." Sarah stepped forward and hugged him. This hardened biker, this outlaw, this man the world would call dangerous. She wrapped her arms around him and held on like he was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Rocco stood frozen for a moment. He couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged him. Couldn't remember the last time human touch meant anything other than violence. Then slowly he hugged her back. "Take care of her," he said quietly. "She's special, brave as hell, smarter than most adults I know. She saved herself. I just opened the door. I will. I swear to God, I will never let her out of my sight again." She let go, wiped her eyes, walked back to her daughter. Rocco watched them drive away. The whole family crammed into one car, holding each other like they'd never let go, heading back to a home that would never feel quite safe again, but was still home. Something loosened in his chest, a knot he'd carried for 30 years. For the first time since he could remember, he didn't feel like running. The investigation exploded like a bomb. The three men, Pete Garrison, Marcus Webb, and Dale Thornton, were low-level operators, street-level soldiers in an army they barely understood. But when faced with the choice between silence and survival, they talked. They talked because the alternative was spending the rest of their lives in general population, and prisoners hated child traffickers more than they hated anyone, more than murderers, more than rapists. Child traffickers were the bottom of the bottom, and everyone in the system knew it. What they revealed shocked even the FBI agents who thought they'd seen everything. A network, massive, organized, spanning 12 states and operating for over a decade. Dozens of children, maybe hundreds, bought and sold like livestock, passed from handler to handler, buyer to buyer, until they disappeared into shadows so deep no light could reach them. The buyers weren't monsters hiding in basements. They were businessmen, politicians, pillars of the community. Men whose names appeared on charity boards and hospital wings, who attended church on Sundays and wrote checks to children's organizations while destroying children in private. The operation had been protected. Cops on payroll in 6 different departments. Prosecutors who buried cases. Judges who sealed records. A system designed to make children disappear and keep them disappeared. Emma had been destined for a buyer in Nevada. A man named Richard Crane, CEO of a tech company, philanthropist, father of 3. A man with enough money to make problems vanish and enough depravity to want an 8-year-old girl delivered to his desert compound. He was arrested 3 days after Emma's rescue. The footage of him being led out of his mansion in handcuffs, his wife screaming, his children watching in confusion, made national news for a week. But he was just the beginning. The Hells Angels didn't stop when Emma was safe. They couldn't, not after seeing what they'd seen. Not after understanding the scope of what they'd stumbled into. They kept digging, using contacts in the underground, people who owed favors, people who wanted revenge, people who knew things the FBI couldn't access without warrants and lawyers and bureaucracy. "We've got names," Diesel told Rocco a week after the rescue. They were sitting in the back room of a bar in Nevada, maps spread across the table, photos pinned to the wall. 14 more kids. Missing, some for years, all connected to this network. Where are they? Scattered. Different states, different buyers. Some might already be. He didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. But some are still out there, still alive, still waiting. What's the plan? Same as before, we find them, we bring them home, we burn this whole rotten system to the ground. Diesel looked at his brother. You in? Rocco thought about Emma. About the crack in the window, about the whisper that had changed everything, about all the children who were whispering right now, hoping someone would hear. I'm in, until the end. The next 6 months were war. Not the kind of war fought with armies and declarations, though there was violence, more than Rocco wanted to remember. But mostly it was a war of information, of patience, of methodical, relentless destruction. The Hells Angels worked with law enforcement when they could, worked around them when they couldn't. They had resources the FBI didn't have, contacts in prisons who heard things, connections in gangs who saw things, access to corners of society that wore suits to work but dealt in darkness after hours. One by one, the children were found. A 12-year-old boy in Arizona, held by a collector for 3 years. Rocco was there when they broke down the door. The boy didn't speak for 2 days afterward. When he finally did, the first word he said was, Mom. A 6-year-old girl in Oregon, sold 4 times before she was recovered. She didn't remember her real name, didn't remember her parents, had to be shown photographs before she recognized the people who had been searching for her for 4 years, teenagers who had aged out of one horror into another, kids who had been missing so long their parents had given up hope. Children the system had forgotten. Rescued by men the system had written off. Each rescue was different. Some were clean. Anonymous tips, police raids, families reunited in airport terminals while news cameras rolled. Others were messy. Confrontations in the dark, violence that would never appear in any report, justice delivered by men who knew the law couldn't be trusted. Rocco was there for all of them. He had found something he'd spent 30 years searching for without knowing it. A purpose. A reason to wake up in the morning. A reason to exist beyond simple survival. Every child he helped save was a redemption. Every family reunited was a weight lifted from shoulders that had carried too much for too long. It didn't erase what he'd done. Nothing could erase the past. The crimes he'd committed, the people he'd hurt, the choices he'd made when he was young and angry and didn't care about consequences, those would always be part of him. But they didn't have to be all of him. He could build something new on the wreckage of who he used to be. Emma Collins testified before Congress 8 months after her rescue. She was the youngest witness in the history of the Committee on Child Safety. 9 years old, sitting behind a microphone in a room full of senators and cameras and history. Her parents had debated for weeks about whether to let her do it. The trauma she'd experienced, the attention it would bring, the possibility of reliving the nightmare in front of the entire nation. In the end, Emma decided, I want to help other kids, she told them. I want people to know what happened. I want them to understand that the system is broken and kids are falling through the cracks. If I can help fix it, I have to try. She sat in front of the microphones, looking impossibly small behind the massive desk, but her voice was steady, stronger than it had any right to be. I was stolen from my bed while my parents slept 20 feet away. I was locked in a basement for 5 days. I was going to be sold to a man who wanted to hurt me. The chamber was silent. Senators who had seen everything shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The police couldn't find me. The FBI couldn't find me. My parents begged for help and nobody could help them. Emma paused, but a stranger did. A man everyone calls a criminal. A man most people would be afraid of. He heard me whisper through a crack in a window, and he didn't walk away. He saved my life. She looked directly at the cameras, at the millions of people watching across the country. People think they know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. They think badges mean good and leather jackets mean bad. But they're wrong. The people who were supposed to protect me failed. The system that was supposed to keep me safe had holes big enough for monsters to crawl through. And the people everyone says are dangerous, they're the ones who brought me home. Her voice grew stronger. There are kids out there right now going through what I went through. Kids who are scared and alone and waiting for someone to hear them. We have to do better. We have to fix the system. We have to make sure that when a child disappears, we don't stop looking until we find them. She took a breath. And we have to remember that heroes don't always look the way we expect. Sometimes they have tattoos. Sometimes they ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're the last people you'd ever think would save you. The testimony made national news. It sparked outrage. It sparked legislation, new funding for child trafficking investigations, new requirements for law enforcement cooperation across state lines, new protections for survivors, new penalties for buyers that matched the penalties for sellers. They called it Emma's Law. It passed unanimously. 1 year after the rescue, Rocco got a letter, handwritten, crayon and pencil mixed together. The handwriting of a 9-year-old who had practiced very carefully, erasing and rewriting until it was as perfect as she could make it. Dear Rocco, my name is Emma, but you already know that. I wanted to write and say thank you again. My mom says I've said thank you 100 times, but she also says some things are worth saying more than once. I'm doing better now. I have nightmares sometimes, but Dr. Sarah says that's normal and they're getting less bad. She says my brain is healing and healing takes time. I go to a new school and I have friends and nobody knows what happened unless I tell them. Sometimes I tell them because I want them to understand. Sometimes I don't because I just want to be a normal kid. I think about you a lot. I think about how scared I was in that basement and how I thought nobody would ever find me. Then I think about the crack in the window and seeing you standing there and how you told me to be brave. I was brave because you told me I could be, because you believed I could be. My mom says you saved other kids too after me. Kids like me who were taken by bad people. She says you've been traveling all over the country helping find them. She says you're a hero, but you probably don't think of yourself that way. I think you should. I made you something. It's a drawing. It's of you and me at the window, the night you heard me. I know it's not very good, because I'm still learning to draw, but I wanted you to have it so you remember. Thank you for hearing me when nobody else could. Thank you for coming back when you said you would. Thank you for keeping your promise. Your friend forever, Emma Collins, P.S. My birthday party is next month. The one I missed when I was taken. We're finally having it. You're invited if you want to come. My mom says it's okay. Actually, she says she really wants you to come. So do I. Rocco read the letter 3 times. Then he looked at the drawing. Crude but clear. A small figure at a window reaching out. A larger figure on the other side reaching back. Between them, a single word in wobbly letters. Hope. He put the drawing in his wallet. He went to the party. Epilogue. 5 years later. Emma Collins was 13 years old. She stood on a stage in Washington, D.C., accepting the National Child Advocate Award for her work with trafficking survivors. Behind her, a banner read, Emma's Hope Foundation, because every child deserves to be found. In 5 years, the foundation had helped recover 43 children, had supported hundreds of families, had trained law enforcement in 12 states, had changed legislation in 16. In the audience, her parents sat in the front row, holding hands, crying. In the back, a man in a leather vest stood alone, watching with quiet pride. 5 years ago, Emma said, her voice steady and strong, I was the girl who got taken, the victim, the statistic, one of thousands of children who disappear every year, most of whom are never found. She paused. But I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a survivor. And survivors don't just survive. They fight back. They use their pain to create change. They turn their worst moment into fuel for something better. She looked at the crowd, politicians, activists, journalists, families who had been touched by trafficking, children who had been saved. Somewhere out there, right now, a child is whispering through a crack in a window, hoping someone will hear, praying someone will come. Her voice broke slightly. I was that child once, and someone heard me. A stranger, an outlaw, a man the world had given up on. She found Rocco in the back of the room and smiled. He taught me that heroes don't always wear capes or badges. Sometimes they wear leather jackets. Sometimes they ride motorcycles. Sometimes they're the last people you'd expect to save anyone. She raised her award. This is for Rocco, for the 47 brothers who came at dawn, for everyone who chooses to hear when it's easier to walk away, for every unlikely hero who answers when a child whispers for help. The applause was deafening. In the back of the room, Rocco wiped his eyes and slipped toward the door. He had never needed recognition, never wanted fame or awards or attention, but Emma caught him in the hallway. Trying to disappear again? He stopped, turned, looked at this young woman who had been a terrified child whispering through a crack in a window. Old habits. Bad habits. She hugged him. Thank you for coming, for everything, for being there when I needed someone. Always, kid, always. She pulled back and grinned. I'm not a kid anymore. You'll always be a kid to me. He smiled. The bravest kid I ever met. Emma watched him walk away, watched him climb on his motorcycle and disappear into the Washington night. He had spent 30 years running from his past. Now he had something better. A future built on hope, on second chances, on the simple truth that anyone can be a hero. All they have to do is listen when someone whispers for help. The end.